theyeshiva.net.
Today's class is dedicated by Stephen and Robin Ross in memory of their beloved grandparents, Selma and Abraham Berman. Thank you very, very much, and may they be an eternal source of light, blessing, and inspiration to you and the whole family and all of our people. Amen. Many blessings and thank you. Thank you very, very much. We truly appreciate your partnership. So let's begin. Let's summarize and continue. The last piece of the Maimer, it's an Tzaddik in Derech Mitzvosecha. He gave an example of war. That in battle, often, in order to engage the enemy, and in order to defeat the enemy, there is a strategy that's employed in which one might do something that seems like a form of surrender, which is allow themselves to go into a place where they can be ambushed or hurt or beaten. But it's all part of a plan, it's all part of a scheme, where that brings out all of the forces, all of the troops of the enemy into the open. And once it's in the open, an open field, an open space, they can ultimately come with their ferocious might and eliminate the enemy. So even though somebody who doesn't understand or looks at it superficially says you're ceding territory, you're giving up, you're allowing yourself to lose and be defeated. You're allowing for casualties. You're allowing your sworn enemy to win you. But that's only a very superficial perspective because they don't see the full picture, and really it's all essential to a strategy, which is the only way through which you'll ultimately be able to win the war. In chess, so somebody wrote in the comments an example from chess, maybe a more benign war. Here he gives an example of real war, which is not fun, to put it mildly, but chess is more of an intellectual war. So sometimes you move your pawn, and you move your pawn to a particular position, you advance it, and you know that you just allowed it to be knocked off the game. You just lost a piece. And in chess, every piece is precious, including a pawn, which one day may even become a queen if you manage to get to the other side. So you literally, willingly, you surrendered your pawn. But what happens? If you're engaging the enemy, you want his bishop or his castle or his knight right here. It knocks off the pawn, and then you'll be able to knock off that piece. Or the real chess champions, they may not knock that piece, but they caused the other person to maneuver and position himself in a way that ultimately will bring to your victory. And that pawn became a casualty, but it's not really a casualty because you're going to win the game. So the Tzemach Tzedek says that even though it's not a precise metaphor, because here, the laws of war, everyone is really limited by their capabilities. With Hashem, it's different. But the similar system works on a cosmic level as well. And that is that in the battle of purity against impurity, which, as he said, is a very, very fierce and genuine and serious battle. And the reason it's a battle is because all unholiness and all evil and all impurity and all klippa only lives off kedusha, holiness. Its entire source of oxygen and vitality and existence is divine holiness. Because without it, it has no kiyum, it has no existence, it has no substance. And therefore, it will fight with every fiber of its being to keep kedusha engaged, to keep kedusha, holiness, entangled and enmeshed and interlaced and interconnected with it, so that it can get its food. And therefore, the most important thing is to cut off the supply. To cut off the supply to the enemy. I'm supplying the enemy, and I have to cut. But that cutting is not easy. because the Klippa will do anything not to allow it. Will use any defense mechanism and any excuse to keep me engaged and entangled. And when you say any excuse, it's talking about any emotion, any rationality, any experience, any intuition, just to make sure that the enemy does not lose its source of water and oxygen and nutrients, which is only holiness. It'll do anything to grab more, but even more not to let go of what it has. Because the moment it does, it has no kiyum and has no existence. And that's where the first bitter comes in. The first bitter, the word bitter, from the word bitter, means to separate. To separate, to be able to create a separation. This is me and this is not me. This is my goodness and this is some dibuk. I'm using the word dibuk obviously in a more general sense. Some dibuk that was inculcated into me that I'm now dealing with. The trick is, the Klippa needs to make you believe that it's not Klippa, it's you. It's really you. That's who you are. That's who I am. As long as this anxiety and this depression and this self-consciousness and this egotism and this despair and the self-doubt and the feelings of negativity and toxicity on me, then the Klippa is good. I'm not getting rid of myself. And that's its victory. Its victory is a perpetrator, whether a physical or emotional or both, internal or external, imbues impurity into me, and I internalize it as mine. Klippa says, good, that's all we need. As long as you took the virus and you made it yours, and now you'll replicate it, and your system will believe that this is who you are, wonderful. Now I'm in the system. To cut off that supply takes a lot of courage, and it's a war. It's a battle. In this battle, he said, there's a side kamus, there's a secret. And that is that sometimes you allow the enemy to cause casualties simply to bring it into a space where you can actually destroy it. So on one level, you're giving up. The pawn, so to speak, is being knocked off the game. There seems like to be a victory, but the only purpose of this victory is what? The ultimate defeat of the Klippa. That was the main point that we learned. Yeah. This is part of the Yidid Tzarech Chaldiyah. When I'm allowing the enemy to defeat me, so he says that's a real Yidid, and it's extremely painful. But the whole real purpose of it was part of the strategy. And he says, therefore, the commander-in-chief, the one who's running the war, he never despaired for a moment. He knew exactly that the pawn is not that he's not losing. It's just a preparation to win. It's a preparation for victory. And he says, and just like in the physical metaphor, he's never going to send in the ultimate generals and commanders and troops that are going to win the battle, because he doesn't want them to be casualties. You have to also know who's going over there to be able to take the bullet.
The pawn, not the queen.
Right. You're not going to put the queen to be knocked off.
You can sacrifice the queen to win the queen.
It's a volunteer.
This is Russian chess champions.
Yeah.
It's a
I'm not going to
volunteer.
argue with Russian chess champions. Huh?
A volunteer. Have to be a volunteer.
Right. The king
Not
you
Sam.
want.
King you can't. That's the right.
If you put the king there, the game is over. So spiritually speaking, what that means, he says, even when there's a casualty, it's only in the chitzonius of the neshama. As he said, it's in the skin, it's in the levushim, it's in the garments. It's never in the bones, in the flesh, in the core. Even the chitzonius, the external elements that are being sacrificed, it's also only to win. It's also not a real defeat. But even that is only the external layer, it's not the internal core. The internal core always remains aloof, sublime, sacred, whole. It's sending in, so to speak, its own troops. It's sending in its own garments into a very violent or bloody or difficult place. And it's going to get hurt. But what's going to get hurt? Never the core, because the core remains essentially transcendent, essentially sacred, essentially victorious. It says by Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim in Parshas Vayeshev. Yosef was lowered into Egypt. Hurad, he was taken down. And Hurad is a passive term. It's not Yorad. He didn't go down. Hurad, he was schlepped down. He was a victim. He was a passive victim. Hurad means you were taken down, like you take down a table. Like you take down a bull, like you take down an inanimate matter. You're transporting a car, you're transporting a horse. Well, a horse is not inanimate, but it's you decide what you want to do with it, if you manage to control it. The Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim, he didn't decide. His brothers decided to sell him into slavery, and the people decided to buy him. So it says in Medrash Rabbi, the word Hurad, that the word Hurad really comes from the word, in Hebrew, Hurad comes from the word Rodeh, which means a ruler. Right? Hashem tells Adam and Chava, Uridu bidgas hayam, I want you to rule over the world. Uridu. Or we say in Tehillim, Yifrach b'yam of tzadik, v'rev shalom ad bli yareach, v'yered miyam ad yom Mashiach. V'yered miyam ad yom. He's going to rule from the sea, miyam, from the sea to the sea. V'yered. Rodeh is a ruler, a mashal. It says, V'yosef Hurad Mitzrayim. Yosef came to rule Mitzrayim. Hurad, he became the mashal, the Roida Mitzrayim. So it's a very interesting matter. But Parshas, literally the Medrash trying to say, it looked like he was going down. But really he wasn't going down. He was going up. Only by becoming a slave and becoming a prisoner did he interpret the dreams of Para, and he became the prime minister of Egypt, second in command. So was he going down or going up? So the Medrash says, Yosef Hurad, he was becoming the ruler of Israel. But yet, it's a nice shite, but at that point, Yosef was going down, he wasn't going up. But the Hurad means taken down. So,
English means forward. Meaning words.
There's a third Pirush in the Medrash, a third commentary. For Yosef Hurad, in the Sefer Torah, there's no vowels, there's no nekudas. So you could pronounce words different ways. And it's precisely that way. There's no nekudas because many words you're supposed to pronounce different ways. Even though in Kriyas HaTorah we pronounce it one way. But the fact that it lends itself to different pronunciations is all part of Torah. That's the concept of Kriya and Ksiv. So the Medrash says you can also read V'Yosef Hoyrid Mitzrayim. Hurad, you can read Hoyrid. Hey Reish Daled. You can do Hoyrid. It says Hoyrid es Hashchina Iman. He took down God with him. V'Yosef Hurad. So Hurad means he was taken down. Another pshat is Hurad is he went to rule. And the third is Hoyrid, he brought the Shechina down. So as one said, if I'm bringing the Lubavitcher never spoke about this. You've discussed it once. Of Shemal of 1981. So he said that all three pshatim are the same. It's not three, it's all the same. It's different dimensions. The Medrash doesn't just mean he was taken down and one day something good came out of that. The Medrash say something else. The Hurad was already a form of rulership. There's two ways of looking at going down. One way of looking at going down is, I'm a victim. I'm a slave. Hopefully one day I'll see the good. But here we're learning something much deeper. The going down itself was a form of conquest. Yosef wasn't going down as a slave. He was going down as a ruler, even though it looked like he was going down as a slave. Because what was he really doing? He was going into that space as a divine ambassador. And that's the whole Vart here. There's two ways of looking at people's journeys. And I know this is much easier said than done, but at the moment we're talking, so I'm talking about it, but I'm saying this disclaimer that nobody should think that the words capture the depth of the intensity of the experience. When somebody goes through a painful journey, especially in their younger years when they don't even have the discernment to know what's their fault, what's not their fault, right? That's the whole challenge. When I'm an adult, I could separate. This is klippa, this is not klippa. I'm guilty, I'm not guilty. This is you, this is me. When I'm 4 years old, when I'm 6 years old, when I'm 8 years old, it's all me. And if something comes from a respected figure, and never mind somebody who's so close to you, it can't be they're bad, right? So who's really at fault? So of course it's all me. I deserved it, I brought it on me. They're saints. This is one of the worst things that play with people's minds. This depth of self-blame, of self-loathing. So I'm the crazy person. Either I deserved it or I'm crazy. And the very fact that I suspect something else just means I'm so evil and dark. You understand? And this is all impurity that attached itself to me and literally hijacks my thoughts. It hijacks my brain. And that's exactly the war that's necessary to separate. So as long as I see it only as I, Nebuch, fell into the wrong place, wrong time, wrong family, wrong community, wrong school, wrong something like that. Those sometimes say in the news, you know, when a tree falls on a car, they were just in the wrong time, in the wrong place. You know, cookies crumble different ways. So now the whole avodah becomes, how could you recover from such an experience? And hopefully you could recover. But there's something much deeper he's teaching us. What if I can go back to that experience and actually imagine for a moment that Hashem was the one who went through the experience? I was like an ambassador, shlucha shlodim kamoisei. So to speak, God's ambassador. God, infinity, all of his infinity, he chose to go into this experience. So it's not that I was so broken, and the question is, can I heal from that brokenness? The I that is at the core divine was never broken. It went into a place of brokenness simply because it knew that with this soul it has the power to defeat the brokenness. In other words, I went in as a king. I didn't go in as the victim. It was infinite consciousness choosing to go through the most finite and maybe darkest of experiences through this soul, which is a chelik elokam imam, knowing that this soul will have the ability to be able to take the slap, to take that pawn, to be able to take the bite, so to speak, or the bark of that pawn being thrown off the board, and yet using that as a catalyst to ultimately eliminate so much impurity from its system and from the world around it. Who was a classic example for this? Yosef. When his brothers were terrified when they saw him and he revealed himself to them. And Yosef, what did he say? Al tayatzu, don't get depressed. Why? They shouldn't get depressed. They don't have a reason to get depressed. He should be the one not to get depressed. They were fine. They were 22 years with their father. Their family went on as normal. Imagine you're in prison for 22 years. Well, at this point, he wasn't in prison. He was Prime Minister of Egypt. But he went through a lot. And even as Prime Minister of Egypt, he was torn away from his family. And then the one who threw you into prison suddenly realizes who you are, who he is, what our relationship is, and gets terrified. And the victim who was in prison for so many years says, oh, don't be upset. It's something is... You hurt me, you destroyed my life, and when I confront you, and I say, Ani Yosef, I'm Yosef, I'm the guy you sold into Egypt, I'm the slave. I say, but don't worry, relax, it's fine. You should say, oh, I'm so sorry, what can I... Suddenly, they were in a much different position than he was. And he said, because you didn't sell me. Hashem sent me. Well, Yosef didn't know that they sold him. Well, Hashem sent him. They threw him into a pit. They sold him into slavery. Yosef was not naive. He told the butler that he was sold. He was stolen. He was kidnapped. Gunov gunafti me Bais Ivrim. Yosef was a very, very practical person. Knew exactly how he ended up in Egypt. He wasn't arguing about the facts. He was not arguing about the circumstances. Yosef hurad. But how do you explain hurad? What is hurad? I know it's hurad. I know the soul went into battle. I know there's blood. I know the soul was hurt, there's casualties. But how do you see it? I could see it from the perspective of, I just had bad mazel, bad luck, ended up in the wrong family, in the wrong place. Or I could see it hided. There's a mission of leadership here. And the leader goes to places where other people don't go. Yosef, nobody else can go there. Yosef's soul was chosen on a shlichus. And you don't send the most trained troops to go sit in a park and eat semichkas, sunflower seeds. The people who had to take out last week the Islamic Jihad terrorists, right? In charge of that operation, you need the most skilled, trained experts. The precision, the meticulousness, because it's such a crazy mission. So imagine when you send this soldier into Normandy, or you send this soldier to blow up Hitler's bunker in Berlin, or you send this soldier to take out Osama bin Laden, or to take out these Islamic Jihad terrorists in Machshemam v'Zichram. The soldier says, what am I, a loser? You're not a loser. You're the man. You're the man. But we don't see it when it comes to our own pain. Because the klippah over there takes over. So of course you're a loser. The Yosef Hurad, he never made the mistake of thinking he was lowered into Egypt. He was just a passive Nebuch case. Hired. He was chosen to be a leader. It was a painful journey. This doesn't mean it's not painful. This doesn't mean you're not going into dangerous places. And it doesn't mean that some soldiers don't come back. They rescued the hostages from Entebbe, and Yoni Netanyahu, and another 3 died. But till their last breath, they didn't see themselves as the losers of the Jewish people who were thrown out of class. You know, go to Uganda. What are you going to do here? Go to Uganda. You get my point. Yosef always understood this, that he was sent on a mission. How did he understand it? That's the third interpretation of Medrash. Because he never thought he was separate from the Shekhinah. So all the 3 interpretations of the Medrash are one. But Yosef Hurad, he was lowered, but really, he was going to be a leader. How? How can they both work together? Because he says, I'm a chelik. So this is a shlichus. It's a mission. It's not a decree. It's not a death sentence. It's a mission that is a difficult one. That's no question. And it's a mission where there's pain. And the external part of the soul, like those troops who go first, like those pawns, they get hit and they get hit hard. Yosef was hit. Yosef was hurt. He wept. Nobody in Tanakh weeps as many times as Yosef. I think in Chumash 7 or 8 times Yosef cries. You don't have that in Tanakh. Somebody crying so many times. If he became a heart of stone and he became just this cold, strong man, he wouldn't cry so much. Obviously, the fact that he was weeping so much means his heart remained open, because that's the key. The key is not to disassociate. You see, what often happens when we go through negative experiences, we do one of 2 things. Either we become so tough and ruthless to survive, cynical, tough, ruthless, you don't believe anybody or anything, and there's a good reason for it. There's a good reason, but you can see sometimes on people's faces. It's just like a certain sense of, this is not going to happen again. Another form, which is very similar, but it's just expressed differently, is disassociation. A person like becomes a little detached from the world, like you're not here. If you're not really here, then you can't really get to me. So either I'm so here, and I'm so tough, and I'm so strong, like I'm not going to be moved by anything, or I just like live in a, like in a sugar-coated cotton candy, La La Land, Six Flags, I'm on top of a Ferris wheel somewhere. Once in a while I'll peek out, but I'm always smiling, but it's really a form of disassociation. So words from the Rebbe Medrash, it says in Parshas Vayikra, Ki chol sa'or v'chol dvash lo yisaktiru mimenu ish el Hashem. You're not allowed to put into a carbon sa'or, which is sourdough, zoya take. Your wife makes sourdough challah. The starter, sourdough, today it's very popular. Used to always be popular. Then we forgot about it. We thought challah is eggs and sugar and oil. Now there's sourdough and dvash, honey. It's a good thing to put into a carbon. Sourdough you put into a meal, it becomes a shayna sourdough challah. You're not allowed to. And dvash, yeah. It's a little sweet. What's wrong? A little sugar in the tea. They're not sugar, Splenda, not Splenda, chas v'shalom. A little honey. Those of you wives who make healthy cakes, what makes a healthy cake or a healthy muffin? You put in honey instead of sugar, at least coconut sugar, chas v'shalom, not regular sugar. So he said that sa'ir represents zoyotake, sourdough. He said that it's a person who's very sour. And dvash is very sweet. So he said, Tzada zoyer mensch, Tzada zis in kemensch. He said, too zoyer and too zis is not good for a carbon. Too sour or too sweet is already, it's off. Nothing wrong with being a sweet person. It's good to be a sweet person. But it means a sweetness it's almost like, I never take this, I'm always sweet. Nothing ever, like, are you here? Are you present? When you're present, either become too sour or too sweet. It's two reactions. One is the reaction where I become very sour. One is the reaction where I go into a different world and I'm very sweet. And you can't blame a person. How could Yosef remain present? How could he remain present? Only because of how he saw himself. This was the main point, yeah? And as we get older, we could reframe all those events and all those experiences and all those journeys as part of this, including the very fact that I didn't know about it when it was happening. I didn't know how to interpret it this way. In other words, I thought I was really sent into battle because I was rejected. I wasn't chosen, I was rejected. That's also part of the mission. That's what everybody has to understand. People sit here and we talk about this and they say, yeah, but when this and when X, Y, Z, etc., I didn't know all of this. I'm messed up. The fact that I didn't know about this is also part of the mission. Don't you understand? That's also what I was chosen for. Anybody understand what I just said?
Yeah.
Undercover.
Huh?
Undercover mission.
Like undercover. You're so undercover that you don't even know you're on a mission. Usually undercover is nobody else knows. But the real undercover mission is you also don't know. You know why? Because if you would know, you would never be on this mission. If you would really know what's happening, you're going into such dark places, your conscious self would never be able to know this. So your soul, your super conscious soul, listen to what I'm telling you. The deepest part of your soul, which is not afraid of anything, because it's part of Hashem, doesn't have to be afraid, says, I'll go there. But if your conscious brain would know that, you're like, no, we're not going there. But it's really all part of that mission. Of course I didn't know. I couldn't know. If I would know, I wouldn't be there. The only reason I could be there is because I didn't know. But that allowed me to go to places that no other soul can go. And now, like Yosef, you can transform the whole tumah. You can eliminate what you have to eliminate. You can transform what you have to transform. For not a moment were you a real victim. Even that which was affected is only the external part of the neshama, which means the way you think about yourself vis-a-vis yourself. The core self remains absolutely pure.
Joseph had some inkling on some level of a greater mission.
Yeah, Yosef was there. Yosef wasn't doing it. He cried, he pained. I don't think he understood. He didn't see how it's working out. But for a moment, he did not feel that he's just an abandoned, rejected victim and start to blame himself. What an evil kid he is. He didn't go there. And that's how he retained his purity, his integrity, his chaim, his grace. There's nobody in Tanakh that you fall in love with so much like Yosef in terms of his grace and his charm. Right? You read the Chumash and you're like, wow, this is a guy I would like to hang out with. Really? He should have been the most bitter, cynical, angry, vengeful man, especially after he got power. Well, how do you know how the Roman emperors or other dictators, when they would come to power, how they would take revenge from everyone who hurt them throughout their life? I'm not going to describe to you what the Roman emperors used to do in order to enjoy revenge from their enemies. Throw them off buildings. I mean, it was horrible what they would do. All their rishus, all their cruelty came out. And with Yosef, you see, he was strong. L'chayda, he was a tough person, and he was a very strong person, obviously. But you never see his toughness turn him into a harsh a dictator, a negative person. There's always empathy and compassion. How does that happen? Unless you disassociate, unless you push it, and what's disassociation? Disassociation is a kid goes through so much pain, the soul leaves the body. Some of you know this very well, unfortunately. And then the body says, you can do whatever you want to me because I'm not here. If the I leaves the body, so that body is just like it's a tissue box. So do whatever you want to the tissue box. But they never come back. They can't come back. Because if you're going to come back and feel the pain, you won't be able to survive. So when I was 4 or 6 or 8 or 2, my brain decided to do what's best in order to survive. What's best in order to survive? Disconnect. You disconnect. You stop feeling your emotions in your body. You're not integrated. You can't be integrated. It would have been too painful. Understand what that means. This is very, very serious stuff in people's lives. Now they're older. They may have children. They can't connect to their children. They want to. They're not bad people. They do the right thing. But the emotions had to be blocked. The emotions had to be cut off. If there's a leak, I remember one Friday night where our ceiling came down and all the water was gushing, right? So we went to shut the water in the basement, in the boiler. There was no water in the house anymore. And it was necessary because if we would leave on the water, don't worry, it wasn't me. I didn't know where it was. Somebody else did it. You're getting impressed. I say. Why? Because if you leave the water source on, the whole house is going to be flooded. So what do? You say, you know what? I don't want to drown. I want my kids to be safe. So you shut the water. Now there's no water, so you can't go to the bathroom. You can't open the sink. But at least, there's a house that's not flooded. So that's what happens. If there's a water leak in my life and suddenly I'm going to be overwhelmed from pain, I shut down. Boom. No water coming out, but at least I could survive. But I know it's a world of emotions. So I copy other people. I look at people and say, oh, I love you. Oh, that's when you say I love you. So that's when I start saying it. So I become artificial intelligence. That's what I become. Not as smart as artificial intelligence, but I try. And if you have a good Jewish head, you do pretty well as artificial intelligence. So many of us walk around and you could put a big sign, I am artificial intelligence. Intelligent, productive, nice, normal, fine, maybe even sweet. But it's all artificial intelligence. And there's a reason for it. I shut down the water at a very, very young age. And you cannot blame somebody for this. Anyone who judges is completely clueless because they don't understand what people go through. They just don't understand it. And if you don't understand it, you have to have the humility to say, interesting, but I don't know what he's talking about, which is fine. That's a wonderful thing to say. I don't know what this guy is talking about.
How do I stop that Kedusha from Sitra Achra?
The first thing is awareness. You say, so how do you cut off the Kedusha from Sitra Achra? Right? That's the biggest challenge. You see? And that's what we could learn from Yosef. Never for a moment did he go into self-blame. I'm the most evil creature who ever existed. He did not go there. Because it wasn't true. Yeah.
Once I was walking in Chaim once, there's a lot of black cats in the whole city. Someone said that these are Gedulim from Kohen. They say, the Ozmarino says that certain Shom going to rise. So obviously there are some people that don't even merit having a tikkun in a guf and a Shom. They have to go into inanimate items. What would you tell them?
I don't know. That's above my pay grade with Yosef. What to tell souls that are reincarnated into.
Yeah, like if there's a cat coming by and he was a fine glove, they tell him take it like a man. Just a cat.
No, take it like a cat.
Take it like a cat.
First give it milk. At least.
And give it some milk.
Tuna.
Listen, every neshama has its journey. The Arizal writes that every single neshama is a chelik elakami mal, and therefore it's going to come to a tikkun. Even those neshamas, it says in Sanhedrin and Gemara, in the 11th chapter, that there's certain people ein lam chelik lo'elam haba. The Arizal says ein lam chelik lo'elam haba may mean that the neshama may not come down in the same guf, but every neshama ultimately comes to a tikkun. And it has to be that way. This is what he says. The Shalom writes this, the Arizal writes this, many of them are Kabbalah. A Mekamelech.
It's a sensitive topic. There's a contradiction in the Kabbalah and Allah over there.
It's not really a contradiction.
About Parshas, it is.
At the surface, it looks like there's a contradiction between halacha and Kabbalah. But if you go deeper into all the sources, you see that there's so many different things that the Chazal say. It's very, very...
Loopholes? Loopholes?
I wouldn't call it loopholes. It's just, it's all very pneumistic. It's very deep. For example, the Gemara, the Mishnah says in Sanhedrin, in the first Mishnah, right? Elu she'elam chelik l'olam haba. Yeah, Yeravim ben Nevat, for example, doesn't have a chelik l'olam haba. But in Yerushalmi and Pei it says that Yeravim ben Nevat does have a tikkun. I'm just giving you an example. And then it says other people they have chelik l'olam haba, Menashe and so forth. And then the Gemara says later, Derech Rishumas amru yesh lam chelik l'olam haba. What's Derech Rishumas? People who read notes. Derech Rishumas. They were expounding on Rishumas. So Reb Tzaddik HaKohen Lublin writes, in Pri Tzaddik, I think, I saw Derech Rishumas means those who know how to darshan the roshim of a neshama. The roshim, the rishumas, they know how to darshan they see the roshim of the neshama. It was never erased. Even a person went so low, there's rishumas, you could still see the residue. They're darshan, they're megalid. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, right, that there's certain people, Gehenim Kala, Vehem Einam Kala. My Gehenim will finish, but not them. So at the surface, what does it look like? They're so bad that the fires of Gehenim won't be enough for them. Chassidus teaches, but look what the Gemara is saying. Gehenim ultimately is going to finish, and they're not going to be done with. At the surface, it means like all the punishments in the world won't be enough for them. You understand? All the fires of Gehenim still won't be enough. What does it say? Gehenim will finish, they won't. Chitzai kolim vehem einam kolim. My arrows will be done, but they're not. This is the Mesachas Rosh Hashanah. We learned it together. Why do we get into this? I forgot.
Right.
The Gilgulim. But that's talking about even in generations where you had real Rishayim. You had real Rishayim. When you talk about in our times, it's a whole different get. In the majority of cases, probably Kulam, and even the Chazon Ish writes, and that's from a completely Litvish perspective. Chazon Ish has a tshuva in Choshen Mishpat, I think Simon Bais, Shals Tshuvas. In the Choshen Mishpat, Chazon Ish, I think Simon Bais or Simon Aleph, I saw.
Yeridai Simon Reish
Huh?
Yeridai Reish Mevav.
Chazon Ish, Yeridai Reish Mevav, but also in Choshen Mishpat.
Not because I was on coffee, because I'm dealing with these kids.
So you know this Chazon Ish. But there's also in Choshen Mishpat, I think Simon Aleph or Bais, in addition to that. And he writes that all the things, Chazal say, Meridin V'loi Mailin, Apikosim and heretics, he says in our generation. Huh? Yeridei Simon Dalet. Okay, so we have a three-way machlokas with this Chazon Ish. But it's a Chazon Ish. Yeah.
Right, it's more
But it doesn't apply today because it's mostly Tinoikas Shinishbu, right? And on the contrary, Meridin V'loi Mailin would make a Chilul Hashem, not a Kiddush Hashem. But in any case, the point here is that you see that so many fall of so many people is by circumstances or situations that are largely out of their control. And the choice that we have, the agency that we have is later how to look at it, how to define it, how to deal with it. Not if it happened or didn't happen.
Just say there are some times we know that the Neshama knows that it's why it's there, and it's because he has to make a tikkun. They say all the Neshamas are making a tikkun. So the person that's suffering in life and he knows it's for a tikkun previously, he knows it's for an elation. It still hurts. It's still difficult.
Yosef's journey hurt. Yosef's journey was painful, but he told his brothers, you did not sell me. I was sent.
Right, but to say to say the second it started, he was already a Moshe, is to somehow minimize the fact that he was like in Iraq. The show was in Iraq. He didn't have any family, he didn't have any friends, he didn't have any he didn't have anything.
Very good question. What does it mean he was a ruler in the beginning? It doesn't mean he looked like a ruler.
It looked like he didn't feel like a ruler.
You're right.
process was painful.
But that's what rulership sometimes is. Rulership doesn't mean that I'm always a king. Rulership means that even when Yosef was in a pit and as a slave, he was a ruler. What does it mean he was a ruler? Not that physically he was a ruler.
He knew.
But he understood very well that he's going into a very difficult place, not as a victim. He's going into a very difficult place so he could be fully present. But the meaning of his presence was not that somebody else kidnapped me and abducted me and I'm gone. The meaning of his presence there is that in order to bring in the truth into those places, I have to go into those places. And therefore I have to be present. And to be present in those places means I feel what's happening in those places. If I'm detached, I never really went there. In order to go there and bring in holiness into impurity, I have to go into the impurity. So Tzemach Tzedek says going in means you get hurt by it. You're feeling where you are. If not, I'm not present. We can understand it practically in our lives. Sometimes if I'm dealing with a situation that's a painful situation, what does presence mean? Presence doesn't mean I just say, oh, it's all good, Gamzulit, everything is good, and I'm just putting on a smile. That's a form of detachment and disassociation, and often I won't be able to deal with it. I'll just ignore it again and repress it again. You have to be careful when you say Gamzulit Taiva, it's all good. Not to say it's true, but sometimes it's done in a way that delegitimizes the experience of it. And then I'm actually not transforming what's happening. I'm detached. To be fully present, it means I feel whatever is going on over there. And that's the whole idea of this battle that he's talking about. Those soldiers are sent into battle, and they're not eating cotton candy. They're not sitting in a Malav Malchus. And that itself is part of the victory. Because the fact that I'm there, who's there? It's Hashem who, so to speak, went in there. He's not a... Gam ki elech begeit salmovis lo ira rakiata imandi. David HaMelech says, as I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I'm not afraid. He doesn't say I'm not walking in the valley of the shadow of death. I'm walking there. And you know what? It's not covered with roses and lilies and tulips. There's other smells over there. But still, I'm not dominated by fear. Because of that, I'm not dominated by fear. Because even in that place where I'm not a winner, I'm a loser. I'm not there as a loser. I'm there as a messenger. I'm there as an ambassador. My soul went into there, and there's only one reason why soul went there, because it has the courage to be able to go there. And it brings out all the toxicity. The pawn gets lost, but the chess game I'm going to win. The game of history I'm going to win. And it's only because I went in there. If I wouldn't have gone in there, then I wouldn't have any contact with the enemy. I have contact. And the enemy came out from the rabbit holes, and all the rats, and all the creeps, and all the monsters, and all the demons came out. Like I said last week, the hyenas are all jumping on my carcass. And if you look at me, I look like a carcass. And that's what that child sometimes looks like. That child looks like literally a corpse that monsters are manipulating and exploiting, and the tumah and the klippa are attached to it. Little do they know what power lay there. And of course they don't know. If they would know, they would stay away. They come out, hyenas come out. But ultimately, when this soul knows exactly who it is, the game is over. You're not going to fool it. The impurity won't deceive it. And he gives an example of Yehuda and Tamar. It says in Zoya, in Parshas Acharei that throughout history, when Yehuda went to Tamar, it wasn't stam. We say a malach pushed him. What does it mean? Yehuda went to Tamar. It wasn't a whole. at the surface, it was a very unholy act. Yet Mashiach comes from it, and Malchus Beis David comes from it. And as he says, the most amazing family comes from it, and the most precious sparks come from it.
Could someone use this malach again?
Huh? That's going to be now the piece. So it's explained in Zohar and other Svarim. This is the idea of, so to speak, you're being defeated by the Sitra Achra. You're going into a place that's extremely questionable. In other words, you're lowering, you're descending into an abyss. But Yehuda understood Kili and Tamar even more. The Zohar says that Tamar understood even more than Yehuda because she's the one who instigated the whole process. The Zohar even says this act of chutzpah, this one act of chutzpah that this woman did changed all of history. That's what he says, this one act of chutzpah. When you say a malach pushed him, what does it mean? We can understand sometimes I'm pushed into situations where I in many cases, I didn't even choose it. I was literally, it's an angel pushed me in. And I got lost in the process, and I fell down, and my pawn was knocked, and another pawn was knocked, and another pawn was knocked, and another pawn was knocked. But the soul was not destroyed. And the whole purpose is to be able to ultimately transform it. And nobody will be able to transform it like the soul. Nobody. And that's why the soul undertook this courageous mission.
And Yosef didn't have these dreams, right? So that kind of prepared him to accept the suffering because he knew that there was something greater, grander later on. But let's say he had the dreams. One minute he's sitting and learning Parshas with Yaakov, and he's in Gan Eden. And then he's on a smelly, it wasn't smelly, it was for him, but he's on this dusty caravan. But fine. Is he supposed to at that point be B'simcha? Or is he supposed to be Kabbalah? Like what's the head?
It works together. You're asking, was Yosef b'simcha or not b'simcha? Was he a happy person or not a happy person? What does happiness mean? What does happiness mean? Does happiness mean that everything is just super, super, super perfect? I don't know if that's what happiness means.
Oh, it's not perfect. He was learning with his father. Now he's not learning nobody.
Okay, so I think happiness, real happiness.
Probably learning.
There's moments that you say this life is perfect. You just have to be grateful.
He
And
was
enjoy.
well prepared.
But I think there's moments what happiness means, not necessarily that everything feels so good, but that I know that I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right place, and I'm doing the right thing, and I'm choosing, and I'm making the right choices, and I'm fulfilling the mission that I'm supposed to be fulfilling now without fear and without reservation. You'll be surprised what a good feeling that is. That's what simcha means. When it says, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, serve Hashem with simcha. And you're supposed to serve Hashem 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But let's face it, you're not going to have 24/7 perfect life experience. What if I'm in a difficult situation? What if I'm working through something very hard? What's the simcha at that moment? The simcha at that moment is not the simcha of I'm just feeling dandy and rosy and everything is perfect. Halavai, you have such moments, you should be grateful. You should be grateful for such moments. But the simcha is the simcha of a conviction that I know that I'm making the right choice right now. Instead of running away, I'm present, I'm showing up. And I'm showing up not as a victim, I'm showing up as a proactive agent of the Rebbeinu Shalom. And that's a very, very powerful feeling. And it creates a certain satisfaction. Not satisfaction in the sense like everything is smug and I'm complacent, but a satisfaction in the sense that you don't have to be ashamed of yourself. It's meaningful.
Also, depression is when you can't move.
Yeah, that's the opposite of depression.
So the opposite is you're actually not just feeling that, you're actually doing something about it.
And let's understand this. And what if I'm feeling an experience of depression? I'm so down. This is such a difficult thing. That itself could be b'simcha. I know that sounds strange. That itself could be b'simcha. In other words, realizing that, yes, this is an emotion I need to go through now. And you know what? It's not fun. It's not fun. But it's meaningful. It's important. I'm present to it. I'm letting myself feel it. We are, because of many, many years of pain, we are afraid of emotions. At least I can talk for myself, but probably another few people as well. We are afraid of emotion, at least certain emotions. And there's a reason for it. Feeling these emotions is not fun. It's just not fun, to put it mildly.
Everyone likes
Huh?
anger.
Anger works better for us because it's about somebody else. What's anger? You're this, you're that, you're that, you're that, you're that. So it almost, I feel, when you're angry at somebody, it's a trick to feel good. It's fake. Because the anger is usually a cover-up. Anger is usually a secondary emotion. That's why the Rambam says, Kol hakayis kilo eved avodah zarah. What's avodah zarah? Avodah zarah is you attribute God to this. This is not God. Anger, is really a cover-up. And anything that's a cover-up is a form of avodah zarah. Huh? Even anger at yourself. Usually anger underlies loneliness, pain, etc. So, but anger becomes self-righteous. You're a Russia, you're sick. You're the sickest person who ever lived. I don't know why I met you. Oh, now, Baruch Hashem, I feel good. I'm a tzaddik, you're a Russia. That's not really what's happening. I'm so angry probably because I want to be close to you and you cause me a lot of pain. But instead of saying that I want to be close to you, I just say I'm angry at you and I don't need you. I don't need you, really? So why are you so angry if you don't need me? I need you very much, but I'm not ready to go there because that's vulnerable. So anger is actually much easier for many of us. But some emotions are very, very difficult. So what does simcha look like? Simcha doesn't look like, oh, my emotions are perfect. It's a shtus. It's foolish to tell a person that if you're an Oved Hashem, there's certain emotions you don't have. That's not true. A soul has all types. It's like a violin. Emotions are like a violin. You have many different chords and they create every different type. You know, how many keys are there in a piano? Huh? 82, 84, 86, right? Each key is essential. Each key is the soul has so many different keys. That's what emotions are. But it's all part of a song. It's part of music. You don't have to cut out keys. I don't like what the song, Ashir el Hashem b'chayoi, David HaMelech says. So it says, Ashir el Hashem, I sing to Hashem with my life, not throughout my life, b'chayoi, with my life. Life is a song. Songs have exhilarating moments, and songs also have downers. Great symphonies have moments of exaltedness and ecstasy, and great symphonies also have moments of somberness. It's all part of the song of life. I don't have to be afraid of my keys, of my notes. Every note needs to be played. If I cut out a note, I'm cutting out a piece of my soul. So you never have to be afraid of the whole gamut of emotions. We're so afraid of it because we're told this emotion is bad, 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 bad. But the truth is, even though Hashem B'Simcha includes that as I experience all these emotions, there should ultimately be a core soul that can observe it and say, wow, this is the journey of my soul, something I need to walk through and dance through and swim through and crawl through.
It's the song of the soul.
It's a song. But as I'm feeling it, it doesn't feel like a song. It just feels horrible, so I want to escape it. So I go eat, or I go drink, or I go to the kiddush, or I go to my phone. Phone is always good. You watch a clip. So at least if you watch my clip, I might be saying, feel your emotions. So it'll bring you back. But if you're watching somebody else's clip, he may also be saying that. I don't know. I don't know whose clips you watch. So what did I do? I numbed it. Why did I numb it? I numbed it because it was too difficult to deal with. Ivdos Hashem B'Simcha means, can you find meaning? There's meaning in this experience. There's meaning. I may not know what, but there's meaning because this is what I'm feeling. If this is what I'm feeling, this is a part of me. To say it's not a part of me is not going to help a person. This is, I think, very important.
That's why Yosef cried so much.
Huh? That's why Yosef cried. Yosef didn't just say, life is perfect. I have a emunah, so why am I crying? You know what? Being in a pit and being separated from your father who you love for 22 years is not fun. Of course he cried.
Limited suppression.
He never had suppression. He never felt he had to suppress his emotions.
How does crying go together with knowing that it's not fitness?
How does crying go together with knowing that I'm on shlichus? I think not only it goes together, it's an expression of it. Because shlichus means that I actually show up. Shlichus doesn't mean I sit on the ivory tower with a joystick. And showing up in certain places means I cry. That's what showing up means. We're looking at showing up as geographically. You're traveling to Afghanistan, you're traveling to Iran, you're traveling to Monsey. I should say Lahav, probably. Okay. But talk about traveling also means emotionally. What if I travel through my emotions? But the Tzemach Tzedek says you're going to war and you're going to have casualties there. What does that look like emotionally? That means going into an emotion. That means going into emotion. That means I'm going into a pain. I'm going in. I'm not standing at the outskirts. I'm not looking with binoculars. I'm not watching it on a video screen. I'm going in. Isn't that what tears are? Tears means I'm there. It affected me. I am here. I'm in that emotion. And you know what? I'm hurt in that emotion. But that's the only way I can actually spit out whatever I have to spit out. I can purge whatever I have to purge. I can vomit. You'll forgive me whatever I have to vomit. I can steer the tumah in the eyes and say, wow, you have really been holding on to me. Yiskadal v'yiskadash. Get out, don't come back. And it won't come back. Try a few times. Being that, those tears means presence. I'm here. Finally, I'm here. That's why the greatest of souls, who have the most courage, for them tears are the most natural. Huh?
That guy defines, let's say, shiva, to be sad. Doing it correctly, it's beautiful.
It's experiencing the full gamut of life's chords, and life's chords have different notes. The great guitarist, the great violinist, David HaMelech on his harp, on his kinnor, it's not like, oh, I only play these chords. The great pianist, sorry, I only do C minors or majors. I only go do the majors. I don't believe in the minors.
Doesn't it go with ego?
Huh?
Doesn't it go together with ego? The crying?
Like everything, it could feed the egoic mind, it could feed the ego, but not necessarily. If the crying becomes an objective in and of itself, meaning all I want to do is just cry and feel bad for myself and remain stuck there, unfortunately, it could be my ego has taken over.
Self-pity.
And I could remain stuck in self-pity. But you know what? That feeling is also something I have to work through. There's a reason people need self-pity. Why do people just want to feel like, I'm a crybaby? Yeah, I'm a crybaby, and I feel good about it. There's a reason for that too. That's also part of showing up. We don't have to be afraid. Anywhere our emotions are taking us, the Tzemach Tzedek is teaching us here, our soul is going on a journey into a place where healing is needed. And you could be there. And even though, but I'm feeling that's exactly what it's like. I'm feeling it.
Besides if it's manipulations.
Huh?
Besides if it's
If I'm trying to manipulate you, then obviously... and I could still look at the fact, why am I trying to manipulate you? Why am I trying to manipulate you? And why am I trying to exploit you? I'm gaining something from this. I probably don't have a core. People who live in a world of manipulation, it's because they have no core. If I can't exploit you, what am I left with? My relationships are all manipulative. That itself, I have to be able to work through. There's nothing you have to be afraid of as long as you're genuine, as long as you're authentic, as long as you're looking for truth. And only you know that. I can't know that. I mean, you could usually see it after a few minutes of talking to people, where they are, if they're... Yeah, if you're in tune, you could... Yeah. That's what it means, Hashem knows. It means Hashem knows. You can't fool Hashem. It means the chelik elekam imal, and you knows. It just knows. Now, sometimes the person is so so deceptive that they don't know they're deceptive. And that's part of the empathy we have to have. If I'm so wound up that I don't know how wound up I am, if I'm so defensive and I don't know how defensive I am, if I'm so angry and I don't know how angry I am, right? But when somebody puts like that little, somebody gives you, and the person just explodes, you can say, wow, what happened to you that you had to become so ignorant? What happened to you that you have to be in such denial? How much disassociation do you have that you don't even know how angry you are? When somebody says, me angry? I'm not angry, you're angry! I'm very calm. And then they start shivering and trembling and moving their feet. I'm a very calm person. I'm a very calm person. You could see how calm I am, no? So the question is, what happened to you that you have to be so disconnected? It's painful. But there's always one condition, and that's the key. Yosef Chayrid. He was an agent of the Shechina. He was a shluchish ladam kamoisai. So the core was not contaminated. Because Tumah can't win God. Klippa can cover up. It can't win. You can't win truth. That's the fundamental question. Can evil really win over the good? Couldn't. So if the whole yesod of Yiddishkeit is Einoid Mulvada, if Einoid Mulvada, it means that ultimately Tumah can't win. Why? Because it doesn't have real substance. How can something that's fake win over truth when it doesn't even exist? So it can't win. The moment Yosef had that in a very deep place, now when he went down, he was really going up. Because going down didn't mean he's becoming lost in the abyss. It means he's going to be the one who's going to defeat the impurity in the abyss. But in order to defeat the impurity in the abyss, I have to be able to descend there. And as the Tzemach Tzedek says, and it looks like I will be defeated by it. I will suffer casualties. I will get lost. But it's only my skin that will have a lot of wounds. And the skin does carry the scars. The fighter who goes into these places, on the flesh, on the skin, he carries the scars and the wounds of a very fierce battle. And that's what gives him credibility. That's what gives her credibility. That's what allowed him to defeat that enemy. He comes back and he says, here, I was there. I was there.
Do you have time on Hashem? Do you have a time?
We have a lot of questions. Listen. Questions we have. Of course there's questions. And you know what? Questions are part of it. Questions are also part of it. Just like crying is part of it, questions are part of it. Moshe Rabbeinu had a lot of emunah and he had questions. Avram Avinu had a lot of emunah and he had questions. It didn't make them less. It made them real. Questions are part of it. If I don't have questions, what does it mean? What am I doing with my brain? Now, are there souls who are so lofty and they really experience life from a particular wholesome place where they don't even feel pain because they're so in touch with the goodness of it? You have such souls. But to copy them in an inauthentic way, it's not my journey. It's not my journey. We were made to feel. We weren't made to be artificial intelligence. They say that the Belzeruv, Reb Aaron, who was a very holy man, Reb Aaron Belzer, Reb Aaron Rekayach. I heard from Reb Chatzkel Besser, Olav Shalom. He was the chairman of Agudas Yisrael. He was the head of claims conference. He was a very special Jew. Came from the Domske Hasidim. So he said that when the Belzer Rebbe was in in Vienna, so he would give shalom to everybody with gloves, or with a shmata. He was careful what he touched, for good reason. He was a very holy person. So he wouldn't give shalom to without he wore a glove or he had a towel. That's how he did it. Now, if somebody else starts doing that to copy him, you understand the difference. I'm going to start wearing a towel. Here, touch the towel. It's like, yeah, I'll take you to a doctor. So I so the Lubavitcher Rebbe was in Vienna. So he went to visit. He went with somebody to see him. So the Belzer Rebbe was almost blind. He later he couldn't see. The Baron Belzer. So it said he was from the Gera family. So Chatzkel Besser knew him. I think he said he heard the story from him. So the Lubavitcher was a son-in-law then of the Rebbe Rayatz. He was learning in Berlin, I think. So anyway, so the Belzer Rebbe came to Vienna, so he was there. So he touched him, and he took off the towel, and he gave him his hand, and he said, "Vada mehent, it's warm hands." So Chatzkel said that the Rebbe said about him, he was given atzura b'li chaymer. He was a tzura without a chaymer. You know what tzura is? The Rambam says tzura is the soul, chaymer is the body. He said that he said tzura b'li chaymer. So somebody one day, they say that the Ger Rebbe, the Bais Yisrael, came and he expressed sympathy on what he went through. He lost his wife, he lost all of his children, he lost everything. He remarried, but he never had a child. His brother had a child and died a year later, and that's the present Belzer Rebbe. Rabbi Sachadov today, the Belzer Rebbe is a nephew of Rabbi Aaron. Rabbi Aaron's children were killed, and then he remarried, but he never had children. He passed away in 1957. Of Chodesh of Chafalef of Tavshin Yud Zayin. Kennt schon sein Belzer Chussid, sagst du? So they say that the Bais Yisrael expressed sympathy for everything he went through. You know, all the pain. So they say, he said, Chas v'sholem, ich hab nicht gehad kein schlechten Tag in mein Leben. I never had a bad day in my life. I never had a bad day in my life. That's what they say he said. What's pshat?
True feeling.
Yeah, by him it was true. Because he was a tzura b'li chaymer. He was a tzura b'li chaymer.
But if any of us will say it, it will be okay.
Yeah, that's my point. That's my point. Reb Zushavanapoli, right? The Maggid, somebody came to the Mezritcher Maggid and said, could you thank Hashem for bad things like good things? He says, go to the Bzusha. So he went to the Bzusha and he stayed there for a few days. He says, what brings you here? He says, the Maggid sent me to come to you to learn how to thank Hashem for bad things. So he says, you probably misheard the name. He said, no, he sent me to you. He said, you probably misheard. He probably sent you to somebody else. He said, why not to you? He says, I never had a bad day in my life. You got the wrong guy. You know, you want to know how to deal with poverty, go to a poor person. I'm a rich man. And that's, the Maggid wanted him to appreciate that there's such a person in the world. In other words, understand, if a person is completely neshama, and the definition of life is a relationship with Hashem, so how does he have a bad day in his life? Every moment he has a relationship with Hashem. How the relationship expresses itself, okay, whatever. One day like this, one day like that. Even then there could be tears. The Belzer Rebbe also cried. But it's a different type of pain. It's the pain of the world, it's the pain of the Shechina, it's the pain of the fact that we don't see so much, it's the pain of what many people go through. That's also pain. You understand? A real Oyev Yisrael has empathy for what other people go through.
Did he have empathy for himself?
I didn't know him, so I don't feel equipped to really, answer that question. And probably even if I knew him, I wouldn't know him. But I could understand if somebody's a tzura b'li chaymer, that they process things very differently. They process things very differently. How do souls process things when they're not in a body? Not the way we process things. Some people come into a body, but they're not. The body is just like a vehicle. It's like a lavush. It's like a suit. It's like a suit. Hashem yinkum damam. I think when we say Hashem should avenge the blood, it means something very special. We say it every Shabbos, right? Over rachamim. V'yinkaim nikmas dam avadav hashafach. Ki nakam yashiv l'tzarav. So it's not just a folk expression. I think it means something very special. It means two things. First of all, it means that the blood of every innocent person that was spilled is accounted for. All the 1.5 million children that were gassed, or the bullets in Ukraine, the Holocaust by bullets in Ukraine, every child, every woman, every man, it's accounted for. It's not just boom, the Nazis come, boom, they never existed. Somebody remembers their blood, and it's accounted for.
It's happening right now.
The blood is accounted for. And who is it accounted for by? Not just by Simon Wiesenthal Center or Nazi hunters, which is also very important, but by the creator of the world himself. That means it's accounted for eternally and absolutely. The creator of the world himself says, I'm going to account for the blood of each one. That's a statement. It's a statement of how we regard life, how we regard goodness, how we regard evil. I think the second element here is, this is already sensitive, this is a very sensitive idea, and I'm not sure, maybe it's not completely accurate. Probably this real feeling can help people move on. Am I responsible to take revenge from every Nazi in the world? If I could, I should eliminate as many as possible. But what allows people to move on and live productive lives? Almost knowing that let God do certain things. They say that somebody once asked Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz, one of the Gdolei Yisrael, very interesting question. He said that the Christian Bible is full of love. God is love, 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 love. Always God is love, love, love. He says in the Jewish Bible, yeah? God is very angry. And he's killing and plagues and punishing. Hashem ish milchama. Yes, there's moments, Ahavti Eschem Amar Hashem, and B'ni B'chayri Yisrael, May Avas Hashem Eschem. You have a few psukim, no question. There's actually more than people imagine, but fine, I'm not going to mention all the sources. But there's plenty of stuff, right? I will cut you off in Asati, when we just read the Teichich and Parshas B'chukoisei. You don't have that in the Christian Bible. Huh? The flood, yeah, God, yeah. So he said, Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz, our God is a God of love, and your God is a God of violence, vengeance, and war. So Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz, they give him a kluge yid. So he says to him, that's exactly the point. For you, God is only love. But sometimes you need somebody to fight a war. So who fights the wars? You need somebody to hate. You need somebody to get rid of evil. Who does that? You. So you became bloodthirsty murderers. For us, God is the God of war. So who has to fight the wars? God. Who needs to hate? God. Who needs to do the violence? God. So we could remain loving. And there's a truth to that. Hashem Yinkom Damai doesn't mean we shouldn't eliminate every Nazi who killed a Jew. And Abba Laharga Chashkem Laharga. But it gives a certain menuchas hanefesh that the Jewish people had. God will not forget any murderer. Huh? That was his point. How many Jews were killed from Christians? How many Christians were killed from Jews? So he said, our God, we believe that God, yeah, he fights wars, he gets angry, he deals with criminals. You know what? And we could be nice to each other. We don't have to kill everybody. By you, what happened? You were fighting for God, so every Jew had to be murdered. Every Jew who didn't convert had to be murdered. We're talking in the times that the Christians were extremely violent. The Crusades, etc., the Inquisitions and the pogroms, and we were accused of everything by the Christians, and how much Jewish blood was spilled in the name of Christianity. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Malachim, chapter 11, he says, when people say that the Christian God, the Christian Messiah brought the Mashiach to the world, he says, if this is what Mashiach looks like, with so much blood and so much violence and so many of us killed, we were hoping for a different type of gula. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure. You're right. For many years we didn't have power. And obviously there were Jews that when they had power did some nasty things. It's no need to be naive. And we know about how many Jews helped Stalin, and how many Jews were in the Politburo, and how many Jews were part of the Communist Revolution, including our friend Trotsky. I'm not here turning into every Jew into a saint. My point is, the Jewish culture, let's put it this way, Jews who are committed to Judaism have a very hard time killing people. Let's face it. And we're not here to say that they're perfect and flawless people. You know, I'm not the one who is accused of saying that. Maybe I should say it more. We know, but the fact is that the Jews who grew up with Jewish culture, Jewish values, it's very hard for them to kill people. Well, we have to walk with guns in Israel. We have to. If we don't walk in Israel with guns and we don't protect ourselves, somebody was telling me, that the Israel and the Palestinians are equal. They both do crimes. So I said, I'll just give you one hypothesis, and you'll answer to me honestly. If the Syrian army decides tomorrow to go on vacation to Hawaii for a year, and Egypt decides to go on vacation, the whole army for a year, and Jordan decides to go on vacation for a year, and the Iranian army decides to go on vacation a year, and Afghanistan, and Lebanon, everyone, all the armies around Israel are going to vacation for 2 years. Do you think Israel the next day is going to invade Iran, invade Syria, control their people? What do you think the truth is? But now give me the opposite hypothesis. Let's say the Israeli army decides to go to Hawaii, not for a year, but for 2 weeks. What do you think is going to be left of Israel? Just be honest with that answer. We think we all know the answer. So what are you comparing? Yeah. And this is a fact. Everybody knows this. Iran would not be afraid that Israel is invading Iran, and Syria won't be afraid, even though we know what Syria and Iran believe about Israel and want for Israel. But Chalila v'chas, if not a week, 1 day, Jews put down their arms. What happened at the Yom Kippur War? I don't think they'll be given 6 hours to breathe. The fact that there's not full, but relative, there could be some days of serenity in Israel, is not because they're not trying. People don't realize that if not for God's miracles and the protection that the Jews created for themselves, b'sayata d'shmaya, there would be every single day, dozens of Jews dead. Not one Jew, dozens, every day. Nobody realizes that. And unfortunately, once in a while, they're successful, sadly. People have to realize this. It's not like, once in a while they decide to do a terror attack. Every single day there's terror attempts. And you saw during the time of the Second Intifada what was happening. Until they built a wall, until they went back into Jenin, because Oslo and Gaza, these were colossal historic mistakes that the Israeli government made that turned out to be fatal strategic errors that they're suffering from every day. How did we get into all of this? You have to remind me. I'm a little ADD. Hashem Ishmulcham. In Yana Diyayma.
This is the first beer.
This is the Birudish. This is Birudish. Okay, we'll take a break here. Tomorrow morning, Beis Hashem, there'll be a shir also, 7:45. Want to try to finish the Maimer, okay? Have a beautiful day.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.